What if betrayal didn't start with a kiss, but with silence? What if her most dangerous words sounded perfectly harmless? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the early emotional warning signs before the damage is done. Hey everyone. Welcome back. Today we're having a real unfiltered conversation, one that too many men only realize when it's already too late. You see, cheating rarely begins with a bold, reckless act. It doesn't just explode into existence. Most of the time, it creeps in slowly like fog rolling in over familiar ground. It starts with distance. Not the physical kind, but emotional detachment. It starts with changes so subtle, you'd miss them if you weren't really paying attention. Less eye contact, more distractions, small shifts in tone or routine. And then, somewhere along the line, your place in her priority list begins to quietly slip. By the time anything physical happens, if it even does, the real disconnect has already taken root. That's what this video is about, helping you spot those early, quiet signs, not through fear, not through jealousy, but with clarity, emotional clarity. Because when a woman starts pulling away emotionally, her words become ... off. Her actions no longer align with her promises. There's a growing gap between what she says and what she truly feels. And that gap speaks volumes if you know how to listen. We're going to break down 4 key phrases that often mean more than they appear. These aren't just throwaway comments. These are subtle reveals of emotional cheating, silent manipulation, or even an exit strategy already playing out behind the scenes. This isn't about blaming her. It's about protecting yourself, your peace, your energy, your emotional boundaries. So if you've ever felt like something was off, but couldn't quite name it, this is your chance to understand what's really happening. Let's start with the very first phrase, and why it's often the first red flag in emotional disconnection. Earlier, we talked about emotional distance and the subtle red flags that creep in before anything obvious happens. Now let's dive into the first phrase, a classic cover that hides more than it reveals. 1. He's just a friend. It sounds harmless, even casual. But for many men, this phrase becomes the start of a slow unraveling, a gut feeling they can't shake. Maybe you've heard his name mentioned one too many times. Maybe it's the way she chuckles at his jokes or lights up when recalling a story involving him. At first, it seems innocent. After all, friends are normal, right? So you reason with yourself. You tell yourself not to be paranoid. You want to trust her, and you do. But there's something off. Something in the tone, the timing, the way she insists. He's just a friend. But here's the truth. Those 5 words are often the surface of something deeper. It's rarely about the friend. It's about the emotional positioning happening underneath. When a woman goes out of her way to explain, reassure, or even justify why another man shouldn't concern you, that's when your attention should sharpen, not because she's necessarily lying, but because she's protecting something. She might tell you he's taken, gay, married, or basically like a brother. Each of these explanations is carefully chosen. They're not there to put your heart at ease. They're there to keep him close while reducing your resistance. The more energy she spends defending the friendship, the more you have to ask yourself, why does she feel the need to explain it so thoroughly? If this man was truly irrelevant, he wouldn't need a backstory. But instead, you'll start noticing patterns. She brings him up when it's not necessary. Her face softens when she reads his messages, and sometimes she even encourages you to meet him, not because she wants your approval, but because she hopes it will quiet your concerns. And yet, it doesn't. Your instincts begin to speak loudly. you start to sense that she protects that connection more fiercely than she protects yours. The turning point comes when you voice your discomfort. How does she respond? Does she get irritated, dismissive, angry? That reaction isn't proof that you're overreacting. It's a sign that you're brushing against a truth she hasn't dared to fully admit, not even to herself. Because a woman who truly loves you, who's fully invested in building with you, won't gamble with your emotional safety. She won't defend a man who's hurting the trust between you. And she certainly won't ask you to silence your instincts just to keep someone else around. That's when the truth begins to surface. Because if she can't create healthy distance, or worse, if she dismisses your feelings entirely, you need to take a serious step back and reevaluate what's unfolding. When a woman gaslights you into believing you're the problem, calling you insecure, jealous, or too sensitive, it's not just disrespect. It's a refusal to acknowledge emotional boundaries that are quietly being crossed, and emotional betrayal. It doesn't come with lipstick on a collar. It doesn't leave marks you can point to. That's what makes it harder to name, but not any less real. Emotional infidelity often begins not with cheating, but with loyalty being redirected. You'll feel it in the silence. In the way she texts more, but shares less. In the way she laughs at her phone, but won't explain what's funny. In the messages that disappear, or are locked behind passwords. In the sudden secrecy, like she's building a new world you're not part of. It might be subtle at first, but it grows. Maybe she starts confiding in him about things she used to bring to you. Maybe she vents to him about your relationship, rather than working things out with you directly. And she calls it friendship. But this is emotional intimacy. Being transferred, one text, one call, one shared secret at a time. And perhaps the most painful part? She may not even realize she's doing it. Or worse, she does realize it. And she doesn't want to stop, because these so-called friendships have a habit of evolving once the current relationship ends. You've heard the stories, maybe you've lived one. Like the man who spent years watching his girlfriend fiercely defend her closeness with another guy. Every time he voiced concern, she laughed it off or got irritated. Then, after they broke up, guess who she dated? That same friend. And guess what? They got married. That man was never just a friend. He was a backup plan waiting for his chance. And she kept the door wide open the whole time. This is the brutal reality. Many men struggle to accept that, yes, he's just a friend may not be a lie, but it's often not the whole truth. Because if she's willing to risk your trust just to keep another man close, she's not fully choosing you. If she gets defensive instead of compassionate when you express how you feel, it's not about love, it's about divided emotional loyalty. And loyalty divided is love diluted. There's a saying that fits this perfectly. You don't compete with a friend. You compete with someone she hasn't been honest about. When her emotional energy is being quietly funneled to someone else, consistently, secretly, it's not in your head. You're living it. And it hurts. A woman who truly values you will make you feel like you are enough. She won't let someone else linger in the background while expecting you to pretend everything's fine. Real trust isn't built by someone saying, "Don't worry." It's built by their actions, especially when no one's watching. And if she won't guard your heart from someone who threatens it, then just a friend might only be the beginning of something far more destructive. Previously, we talked about how emotional loyalty can shift without a single physical touch. But what happens when you sense that shift, and she makes you feel guilty for noticing it? 2. Gaslighting and deflecting accountability. There are moments in every relationship when something just doesn't sit right. A strange shift in her tone, a hesitation in her answers, a story that sounds slightly off. So you bring it up, not aggressively, just with quiet honesty, hoping for reassurance, hoping you're just overthinking it. But instead of clarity, what do you get? Deflection, dismissal. Suddenly you become the problem. You're being too sensitive, too suspicious, too insecure. What started as a conversation becomes a courtroom, and somehow you're the one on trial, not her behavior, not her inconsistencies. You. This isn't just a miscommunication. It's a psychological move, one meant to dodge accountability and turn your concern into self-doubt. Let's say you saw her sitting a bit too close to another man. Or you noticed a late-night text from someone she said she barely talks to. You bring it up because your instincts are whispering that something's off. But instead of discussing the issue, she redirects the spotlight onto your reaction. Now you're being accused of being paranoid. That's not honesty. That's gaslighting. And gaslighting doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, confusing. It manipulates you into shrinking, second-guessing, and silencing your own intuition. In some cases, it goes even further. You express concern, and suddenly, she flips the script entirely. Why would you even think that? Are you the one cheating? That's not defense. That's projection. She's not explaining her behavior. She's planting suspicion in your direction, pushing you off balance, just enough to make you question your sanity while she escapes accountability. And the more you try to find answers, the more her stories begin to twist. One day, she says she went out with just the girls. A week later, someone casually mentions a guy was there. You ask her about it, and she laughs. You're reading way too much into this. But deep down, your gut tightens, because the truth has a way of leaking out in the smallest contradictions. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just an inconsistency here, a hesitation there. But over time, these cracks chip away at your confidence. You begin to ignore your gut in favor of the tidy explanation she gives. You tell yourself not to cause drama. You tell yourself to trust her. But here's what you need to remember. Your intuition doesn't lie. When something feels off, it usually is. You don't need every piece of the puzzle to line up perfectly to trust what your gut is telling you, especially when the pieces you're given keep changing shape. Previously, we explored how gaslighting clouds your intuition and makes you question what you know deep down. But when your spirit feels unsettled, there's always a reason, and it often shows up in her next phrase. 3. I need space. The softest exit often comes disguised as something thoughtful. When a woman says she needs space, it rarely arrives out of the blue. It's usually preceded by a series of small, unsettling signs, things that don't quite add up, but are easy to dismiss if you're trying to hold on. She may frame it as self-growth, as clarity, as something temporary and mature. But more often than not, the space she's asking for isn't really empty. It's already being filled with new energy, new people, and sometimes a new man. The words sound gentle, like she's just trying to find herself. But look closely, and you'll realize this phrase is one of the most common and most misunderstood exit strategies in modern relationships, because it doesn't always mean pause. It means transition. It's a way to slowly detach without appearing cruel. A graceful emotional exit while still keeping a safety net. And the signs are almost always there before she says the words. Her texts become fewer and colder. Calls that once lasted hours are now short, delayed, or skipped entirely. Touch fades. Not because of stress, but because the emotional connection has already started to fray. She spends more time out, or with new people you've never met, in places you're not invited, and when you bring it up, there might be a new name, followed by the familiar, "He's just a friend," but her energy tells a different story. There's no warmth, no depth, no shared intimacy, just presence without connection. And this is where many men fall into a painful trap. They chase. They apologize. They try to reignite what's already gone cold, hoping that if they just say the right thing, she'll come back. But here's the hard truth. She's not asking for space to fix the relationship. She's asking for space to test life without you. And while you wait on standby, she's quietly shifting her attention elsewhere, yet still watching how you respond. The more you reach, the more she retreats. The more you explain, the less she listens. Because she's not looking for answers. She's looking for distance without guilt. The strongest thing you can do isn't to plead, chase, or prove your worth. It's to honor her request for space. Fully, completely. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Let her actions speak. Let her silence explain everything. If she uses that space to get closer to someone else, the truth was never in her words. It was always in the distance. There's deep wisdom in restraint. A man who doesn't chase when someone pulls away isn't passive. He's powerful because he's anchored in his own worth, not waiting to be chosen. And eventually, if she ever reflects on what she left behind, she won't remember your pleading. She'll remember your absence. The quiet power of a man who didn't need to beg to be valued. In the last section, we saw how honoring space can be an act of strength, not surrender. But sometimes, instead of asking for distance, she hands you a phrase that sounds like kindness and masks her silent goodbye. For you deserve someone better. This is one of the most disorienting moments in a breakup. It doesn't hit like a storm. It arrives quietly, wrapped in soft tones, downcast eyes, and a calm, almost rehearsed expression. She sits across from you. Maybe she looks sad. Maybe she looks at peace. And then she says it. You deserve someone better. At first, it sounds like a compliment, like a noble offering. But the truth behind those words isn't generosity, it's finality. Because beneath that polished sentence is a truth she won't say out loud. I've already left, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. When a woman says, you deserve better, she's already gone. Maybe not physically, maybe not officially, but emotionally, she's no longer there. The warmth has vanished. Her presence feels different, like you're sharing space with someone whose heart has already packed its bags. You'll start to notice subtle but painful shifts. The conversations get shorter. The eye contact fades. Her touch feels automatic. Not affectionate, more like muscle memory than love. And that phrase, it isn't the start of a discussion. It's the closing line. This is one of the cleanest emotional exit strategies a woman can use. Why? Because it gives her the moral high ground while shielding her from guilt. Instead of saying, I've fallen out of love, or I'm interested in someone else, she frames it as a gift to you. You deserve more. It sounds compassionate, but the intention is control. She's not trying to hurt you, she's trying to leave without confrontation, without messy questions, without having to explain choices she's already made, especially if someone new is involved. It's a strategic exit, dressed as empathy. It lets her walk away without feeling like the villain, and the emotional burden It quietly shifts to your shoulders. Suddenly, you're not the one being left, you're being released. She reframes the breakup as something for you, rather than what it truly is. A decision made by her. And it works. Especially if you're still holding on, still hopeful, still believing that maybe, just maybe, she's confused or overwhelmed. So you try to fix it. You offer more communication, more attention, more effort. You tell her you're willing to do whatever it takes. But what you don't realize is, she's not waiting to be convinced. She's already made her choice internally. She doesn't want solutions. She wants closure on her terms, without the mess. Trying to win her back now won't rebuild the bond. It will only erode your dignity. One unanswered message at a time. And that's the hard truth. Real strength here looks counterintuitive. It's not in chasing or pleading. It's in accepting the unspoken answer and letting her go without needing every detail. In the last part, we uncovered how the phrase, "you deserve better," is less about compassion and more about quiet closure. Now it's time to face the truth hiding in the silence between her words. When a woman has emotionally checked out, she won't always say it outright. But you'll feel it. In her tone, in her stillness, in the strange calm she carries. When you expect warmth and connection, she wants the ending to be clean, quiet, and most of all, easier for her. But here's what you need to understand. Your acceptance of that truth is not a sign of weakness. It's a mark of self-respect. Because if someone truly values you, they don't walk away wrapped in soft phrases and passive exits. They stay. They struggle through the discomfort with you. They choose resolution, not escape. There's a timeless saying that fits here. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So when she tells you, "you deserve better," don't hear it as love. Don't read it as humility. Read it as what it really is. Her request to be released from a role her heart no longer wants to play. The sooner you recognize that, the sooner you'll stop clinging to the idea of who she was and start facing who she is now. Healing doesn't begin when you chase closure. It begins when you choose clarity. And that clarity comes from this. Real love doesn't end with a catchphrase dressed up as compassion. It either stays and fights, or it leaves honestly. Everything else is just a goodbye dressed in politeness. Conclusion. Don't single quotes. Settle for half effort. Don't accept the bare minimum while convincing yourself it's love. Cheating, at its core, is rarely impulsive. It doesn't explode out of nowhere. It creeps in slowly through emotional withdrawal, fading loyalty, and subtle disrespect. And as you've seen throughout this video, it usually begins with quiet cues, words that seem harmless on the surface, but signal something much deeper beneath. He's just a friend. You're being insecure. I need space. You deserve someone better. These aren't just phrases. They're red flags dressed in softness. They are signals that the emotional tide has shifted. And when a woman starts to emotionally detach, her language changes. Her energy becomes distant. Her reassurances begin to feel scripted empty. She may not confess directly, but if you listen closely, through her tone, her silence, her absence, you'll hear everything you need to know. This is why the pain cuts so deeply for many men. Not just because of the betrayal, but because they saw it coming and ignored their instincts. They tried harder, gave more grace, made excuses, but emotional infidelity, it rarely corrects itself. Once respect is lost, once another man begins to occupy emotional space in her heart, the bond you once had is no longer the same. And as we'll explore in the final part of this journey, Knowing how to walk away with strength, clarity, and self-worth is what separates a broken man from one who grows stronger from the lesson. Let's talk about that next dot throughout this video. We've uncovered the subtle language that reveals emotional withdrawal. Now it's time to ground everything in one powerful truth. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being present. This isn't about encouraging distrust. It's about learning to hear what isn't being said. Because when a woman is still emotionally committed, it shows. She protects the connection. She respects your boundaries. She speaks honestly. She shows up fully. But when her words begin to deflect responsibility, when guilt replaces communication, when she asks for space without clarity, it's often not growth, it's the quiet beginning of her emotional exit. And here's the truth you must hold on to. You are not responsible for convincing someone to stay. You are not required to beg for attention, clarity, or loyalty. Especially when vague phrases, avoidance, or coldness take the place of real connection. It's not your job to decode someone else's detachment. It's your job to observe, assess, and protect your peace. Staying in a one-sided relationship, hoping love alone will bridge the gap, doesn't heal anything. It only prolongs the pain and delays your transformation. Because a man of value doesn't chase unclear affection. He doesn't tolerate emotional ambiguity. He doesn't stay where he's only almost loved. Instead, he moves with quiet confidence. He lets go of what no longer serves his spirit. And in doing so, he creates space for peace, for growth, for the kind of connection that doesn't make him question his worth. That's not weakness. That's not anger. That's power, the ability to detach with dignity. So as we close this chapter, ask yourself honestly, are you accepting less than what you deserve? Are you holding on to words that sound caring, but feel hollow? And if so, are you finally ready to choose self-respect over confusion? Have you experienced these emotional signals before? How did you respond, and what did it teach you about love, boundaries, or yourself? I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your truth might be the light someone else needs right now. And if this message brought you clarity, insight, or strength, let it show. Like the video. Subscribe for more content on emotional intelligence, healthy relationships, and becoming the kind of man who no longer chases because he knows his worth. Until next time, protect your mind, honor your heart, and always walk with quiet strength.